You're listening to Built for Nature, an exploration of how humans are designed to live through first principles, light, water, magnetism, and the deeper forces that shape human biology. Today's episode is a little different. It's not just about a scientific concept, it's about the process of science itself. And this is important because so much of what people believe is because there is a scientific consensus on a specific issue. The inspiration comes from the book Going Somewhere: Truth About a Life in Science by Andrew Marino. And the core idea is that understanding human biology isn't just about discovering the truth, it's also about navigating the systems that decide which truths get accepted. Now, Andrew Marino worked very closely with Robert Becker, whose work we covered in previous episodes. Becker helped establish the idea that the body is bioelectric, and Marino continued that work. But Going Somewhere isn't just about experiments. It's about what happens when scientific findings challenge existing beliefs. One of the biggest takeaways from Marino's story is that science is not purely objective, though it should be, and most people assume that it is. Science, as we all know it, is heavily influenced by institutions, funding, reputation, and existing paradigms. So new ideas don't just need to be correct, they need to survive scrutiny, resistance, and quite frequently, outright opposition. Financial interests frequently shape which research gets funded and which gets published. When studies come from organizations with vested interests, it's always worth asking who benefits from the conclusions. Industry funding creates subtle pressures, and they're frequently powerful enough to tilt priorities toward outcomes that protect revenue streams. Marino was constantly dealing with this conflict of interest, and it's very eye-opening if you're someone who's simply never thought twice about the validity of whatever science you're being sold as completely settled. A major focus of Marino's work was electromagnetic fields, also frequently referred to by the acronym EMFs. Marino specifically wanted to know if low-level electromagnetic exposure can affect human biology. Not high-level radiation, but the kind of exposure that comes from power lines, electrical systems, cell phones, and many other everyday environments. This connects directly to what Becker explored in Cross Currents and expands on what we discussed in our last episode. The difficulty with this kind of research is that the effects are subtle, they're not immediate or dramatic, and they're not easy to isolate, which makes them very easy to dismiss. But Marino's work shows us that biological systems respond to very weak electromagnetic signals, especially over long periods of time. This brings us back to a fundamental truth of nature. Biology is not just robust, it's also sensitive. At the cellular level, processes operate with extreme precision. As Becker's work showed us, the body runs on subtle electrical gradients. This means that even weak external fields like those from everyday electronics can interact with those biological systems. So one of the most important parts of Going Somewhere is not the science itself, it's the resistance Marino encountered. He was constantly fighting an uphill battle his entire career. Research dismissed, funding revoked, pushback professionally, not because his ideas were wrong, but because they didn't fit the existing framework. This is a pattern that shows up throughout the history of science. New ideas often face resistance before they're accepted. This isn't just about scientific politics, it has real implications for how you think about health. Because it means not everything important is fully understood, not everything real is universally accepted, and not everything accepted is complete. So when you layer Marino's work into the Built for Nature framework, the picture sharpens. Light affects biology, water structures energy, mitochondria manage electrons, the body uses electrical signaling, and our environment influences all of it. So how do you apply this without overreacting? Like we discussed in the last episode, we're not going to stop using modern technology entirely. It's not practical, but it's important we recognize uncertainty and be thoughtful about exposure. First, simply just increase awareness. Simply understanding that your environment has electrical properties is a mindset shift for most people. You're not just interacting with physical objects, you're interacting with fields. Most of the time, this is invisible, but it's still part of your environment. Second, reduce chronic load. Eliminating all exposure isn't practical, but you can reduce unnecessary load. Like we talked about in the last episode, some simple steps like creating distance from devices, avoiding constant proximity to electronics, and spending time outdoors, free from indoor environments that are heavily clouded with EMFs. Chronic exposure to EMFs over time is what we're trying to combat here. So reducing exposure to them on a daily basis whenever possible creates a meaningful counterbalance. Next, prioritize natural inputs. Nature provides a different baseline. Sunlight, grounding, open environments, lower artificial signal density, more stable inputs. Time in these environments will help balance the system as well. And last, strengthen your biology. The stronger your internal systems are, the more resilient you become. You strengthen your biology by structuring an orderly environment where your cells can thrive. Mitochondrial health, sleep quality, metabolic health, movement. Building resilience is of the utmost importance because, like I've said many times now, we're not going to go live in the caves or on a deserted island. We simply have very little control over a lot of our modern day environments, so it's important to be as resilient as possible in order to deal with them. Marino's story highlights how we're still learning how our biology interacts with the environment, especially when it comes to electrical and electromagnetic influences. And due to the constant opposition by wealthy and powerful entities, that learning process has been very rocky. So a great idea to take away from going somewhere is that understanding human health requires both good science and the willingness to question what we think we already know. Because biology is complex, the environment is complex, and the interaction between the two is still being explored. Thanks for listening.